For you, Madam Chair, the meeting is live.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting for May 16th. Beginning March 1st, 2022, the City of Kitchener has aligned with provincial changes to COVID-19 restrictions, and City Hall is now open for in-person services, but appointments are still being encouraged. The city remains committed to safety of our patrons and staff and continues to facilitate electronic meeting participation for members of the public. Those people interested in participating in meetings can register to participate electronically by completing the online delegation registration form at www.kitchener.ca/delegation or via email at delegation@kitchener.ca. For those who are interested in accessing the meeting live stream video, it is available at www.kitchener.ca. Watch now. So we have no consent or discussion items this evening, so we'll move directly into the public meeting. This is a formal public meeting to consider applications under the Planning Act. If a person or public body that would otherwise have an ability to appeal a decision of the City of Kitchener to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the bylaws passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. The item to be discussed this evening is regarding the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for the development of 20 Ontario Street. An additional written submission was received on this matter from Ann Welch. And I'll now pass it over to Mr. Craig Dumart, City Planner, who will provide us a 10-minute presentation on this topic.
Good evening, members of the committee. Before you is a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment application for 20 Ottawa Street North, proposing a mixed-use development consisting of a 26-story tower with a 5-story podium and 2 mid-rise buildings that are proposed to be 4 and 6 stories in height. Next slide, please. The subject lands at 20 Ottawa Street North are located near the intersection of King Street East and Ottawa Street North. The property has a lot area of 1.23 hectares with 147 meters of frontage along Ottawa Street North. The property is currently occupied by a commercial building and a large surface parking area, which was formerly used as a car dealership. The surrounding neighborhood consists of a variety of uses, including commercial buildings, medium-rise residential uses, single-detached dwellings, low-rise multi-dwelling buildings, and institutional buildings. Directly to the north of the property is a commercial plaza. To the south is a commercial property, and across the street to the west are commercial and institutional properties. Uses on the lands to the east of the subject lands include single-detached dwellings and institutional uses, which have frontage on Onward Avenue. Furthermore, the subject lands are also located within 500 meters of the Borden Iron LRT station stop, which is located at the intersection of Charles Street East and Borden Avenue South. Next slide, please. So 20 Ottawa Street North is located in an area that is prime for redevelopment and intensification. The subject lands are located within the city's delineated built-up area and within a major transit station area, and they've been identified within the Borden Major Transit Station area. As of June 2021, the Borden Major Transit Station area had 44 people and jobs per hectare, which is significantly shy of meeting the minimum target of 160 people and jobs per hectare. The proposed development represents intensification that will help the city achieve the density targets in the MTSA, as the proposed designation and zoning will support a higher density housing option that will help make an efficient use of existing infrastructure, transit, roads, and trails. The region of Waterloo has also identified that the subject lands are located within a potential intensification corridor as part of the regional official plan review, and they are an appropriate location for prime intensification. Next slide, please. So the lands are currently designated Neighborhood Mixed Use Center with Special Policy Area 3 in the City of Kitchener King Street East Secondary Plan, and they're zoned Neighborhood Shopping Center, C2, with Special Use Provision 2U in Zoning Bylaw 85-1. The owner is proposing to change the official plan designation from Mixed Use Center to Mixed Use Corridor in the King Street East Secondary Plan, and proposing to change the zoning from neighborhood shopping center zone to high intensity mixed use corridor zone, so MU3, and zoning bylaw 85, with special regulation provision 777R and holding provision 92H. The proposed mixed use designation and zoning will allow for a mixed use development with a floor space ratio up to 4. Staff is also recommending special regulation 77R to apply to the subject lands, which will regulate parking requirements, regulate building heights adjacent to low-rise residential zones, increase the visual barrier height requirement, and allow for dwelling units and commercial uses both to be located on the ground floor. And staff are recommending holding provision 92H apply to the subject lands, which will require remediation of site contamination and an updated noise study. Next slide, please. The original development proposed 2 6-story mid-rise buildings and 1 26-story building with 464 dwelling units, which had only 1 and 2 bedroom units. And there were 342 parking spaces proposed, 92 of which were proposed to be located on the surface. In response to comments provided by planning staff and the public, the applicant has revised the development proposal. The revised development is now proposing a 4-story building, and this building is now proposed to be located closest to the low-rise residential zones where previously was 6 stories, and also proposing a 6-story mid-rise building and a 26-story tower, now with 315 parking spaces. However, only now 49 surface parking spaces are proposed. The revised development is now proposing a mix of residential unit types, including 15 2-story, 3-bedroom live-work units, which will be situated along Ottawa Street North. Furthermore, a large second-floor amenity area is now proposed, which will provide for adequate amenity space for future residents of the development, and it will not put further pressures on nearby existing parks and open spaces. Next slide, please. So this concept layout shows the massing of the proposed development, and it illustrates how the proposed development has situated the 26-story tower in massing towards the northeast portion of the site along Ottawa Street. And the tower is approximately 90 meters from the low-rise residential properties. The proposed mid-rise buildings, they're located at the rear of the site, and they'll provide a compatible transition to the adjacent low-rise residential neighborhood. A 4-story building is situated adjacent to low-rise residential dwellings, while the proposed 6-story building is proposed to be located adjacent to the surface parking lot of the church property located on Onward Avenue. Next slide, please. Concerns from the public were raised with the lack of park space within the neighborhood, and staff identified that parkland dedication will be further explored through the site plan approval process. So in addition to the possibility of parkland being attained through the site plan process, to alleviate pressures on the existing public park space and existing open spaces, the proposed development includes 2,635 square meters, so that's 28,360 square feet of landscape amenity space, which will be located on the second level. As well, the proposed development includes at-grade pocket parks along Ottawa Street, and at-grade amenity space is located in terms of the site for future residents. Next slide, please. So this development proposal, it represents an opportunity. It presents an opportunity to redevelop an underutilized parcel of land with a new mixed-use development that aligns with the City of Kitchener's official plan. The proposed development will introduce a new compatible built form to the neighborhood. It will help diversify housing stock and provide a mix of units and additional housing options in the community, and increase housing supply within the Borden major transit station area. Furthermore, the development will contribute towards a complete community and contribute to meeting the city's intensification targets for the Borden major transit station area of 160 people and jobs per hectare, which currently does not meet that minimum target. Next slide, please. In conclusion, staff are supportive of the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. The proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, they're consistent with policies of the provincial policy statement, conform to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the regional official plan, and the City of Kitchener official plan, and represents good planning in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll now proceed with the delegations registered for this item. I'd like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. You will be made a panelist prior to your name being called. Once you have joined the meeting as a panelist, you will have access to your microphone and camera. Please leave your video camera turned off and your microphone audio muted until you are called up to speak. So unless there's any other, if there have been any changes, we really have just one delegation this evening. And it's Dave Aston and Zach Zaire from the development project itself. And you have 10 minutes to make your presentation. I understand you have are you going to be doing this together?
Good evening, Chair Chapman. I will be doing the presentation, Dave Aston, and Zach is actually here in the room with me, and we'll both be available for questions. So once we get to that point, Zach will turn his camera on and we'll be happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. So thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. I want to start off by thanking Mr. Dumart for his presentation and to all of staff for working with us through the process to get to the point this evening. As a introductory and concluding comment, we have had the opportunity to review the staff report and the draft amendment to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, and are supportive of the recommendations. So this evening, just want to take the opportunity to build on Mr. Dumart's presentation and share some of the imagery that we have and some information associated with the proposal. So next slide, please. As Mr. Dumart has outlined, there's two applications, the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. Following consideration, should this be successful, we would be working with city staff through the detailed site plan review process, where we would address all of the requirements associated with site planning, such as lighting, landscaping, building elevations, and all of those details as it relates to the site development. Next slide, please. As mentioned, the concept plan has evolved since the original application, proposing 476 units with a parking rate of 0.74 spaces per unit. It's not on the slide there. It is in the staff report and proposed bylaw. To land at that proposed rate, we worked with city staff, prepared parking study, looked at transportation demand management alternatives, including proximity to transit in the major transit station area, and other components associated with additional bike parking spaces, car share space, and electric vehicle parking, which will be further detailed in the site plan process. We've worked through considerations associated with on-site amenities, looking at ground level amenity and landscape area, as well as a raised courtyard, as mentioned by Mr. Dumart. And the raised courtyard will have a mix of landscape area, both passive and active, to provide for the residents within the area. The building heights range 4 stories, building C on this plan, 6 stories with building B, and 26 stories, which is the tower, building A, with a podium along the Ottawa Street corridor. The FSR is 3, which we see as an appropriate fit within the area. And the site plan design we've worked through in consideration of the existing conditions in the area and providing an appropriate transition, both height and scale and massing, and consideration of shadows. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are just renderings associated with the development. This first slide is the Ottawa streetscape. And as mentioned, this component includes the podium, and then you can see the tower. The site access just to the right, you can see there's an enhanced entry that would be considered for the lobby area and to provide really a gateway or corner component of the development. The ground floor, you'll see the walk-up or the terraces that provide the opportunity for the live workspace. And these provide a bit of a dynamic space that is landscaped and also eyes on the street associated with Ottawa Street and really an interactive public realm. The pocket gardens and the entry features provide an articulation to the building and soften the development along Ottawa Street with green spaces that welcomes people into the site and provides opportunity along the street for pedestrians to enjoy the public realm. Next slide, please. This depicts the raised courtyard. So you can see a mix of landscape area for active space, passive space, and units that back out with balconies onto that space that have access to it. So again, more opportunity for interaction between the units and eyes on that space for creation of safe spaces. Next slide. We looked at the tall building guidelines in relation to the proposed tower. You can see that under the tall building guidelines, there'd be permitted approximately 11-meter tower separation from adjacent residential. And what's being proposed with the tower is approximately 85-meter separation from low-rise residential. Next slide. This plan really just shows an overview of the changes that have occurred since the application was submitted. Many of these relate to comments that were received from the neighborhood information with regard to the building height to the rear or building C and the transitioning of that height to the Ottawa Street frontage. Other change is the courtyard area, which was in response to comments related to ensuring an appropriate amount of amenity space and landscape area for the residents of this community. So those, along with some other details that have been addressed through the comments from the agencies and cities, represent the plan that is proposed relative to the zoning bylaw amendment. And again, as I mentioned, further details in landscaping and the site layout would be determined through site plan review. But we do note that in the zoning bylaw amendment, there are details associated with setbacks of building height from existing residential. So that building C in the bylaw, city staff has provided specific detail that height could not increase unless that building shifts more interior to the site. So there's requirements in place through the zoning bylaw that will move forward as it relates to the site planning for the project. Next slide. Mr. Dumart covered off the policy overview. We agree with his opinions related to the designations and the support of the policy framework to promote intensification and support a mix and range of unit types within the major transit station area, mixed use center, and the intensification corridor. Next slide. As part of this application, there are a number of studies prepared and technical reports submitted and reviewed by the city and region. And you can see the list here. These were all reviewed. Comments were provided where there was a need. There was follow-up and responses in support of the application. All of these requirements have been addressed, or there are details, for example, the record of site condition there's a holding provision in place related to that item. So through all the technical details, the site concept has been considered and recommended for approval this evening. Next slide. And in conclusion, we support the staff recommendation that the proposal represents good planning. It's consistent with provincial policy, conforms to a place to grow, regional policy, direction of the city's official plan, represents appropriate density in a major transit station area to support targets within that transit station area, exceeds the tall building guidelines for tower setbacks to low-rise residential, and provides for an appropriate transition from low-rise residential to through the building design with the major density and height located along Ottawa Street, and provides for a mix of housing types, including 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units within the project, and parking supply that's supported by city staff. And that's our presentation for this evening. We're again here in support of the staff recommendation and happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I see Councillor Marsh, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
All right, thanks very much. And thank you for your presentation tonight. I'll have questions of staff and of the delegate. So I don't know, Chair Chapman, how you want.
Well, why don't you start with the delegate and
Yeah.
then we'll see how it goes.
Sure. All right. I wanted to know about the pedestrian access. That was one of the comments that I heard loud and clear from members of the neighboring properties. They still would like to be able to access the plaza that's adjacent to your property. Can you tell me about what the plan is? Is there an opportunity for pedestrian access there?
Yeah, through Chair Chapman to Councillor Marsh, we have the ability to work with staff through the site plan process to look at that pedestrian connection. We know there are some constraints with the existing property boundaries, but we're certainly willing to work with staff to look at the potential to make that pedestrian connection in the site plan design in a way that provides, safe pedestrian access through the site to Ottawa Street.
Okay, thanks. And then, so what about green spaces? That was also, I noticed that in the public meeting, the landscape architect spoke about what a great opportunity this property was because there's so much opportunity for, green space. But I see hardly any at-grade green space here, except for what you're calling a pocket park. But in your, so what, other than the 2 Ottawa-facing little entrance ways that have a bit of greenery, is there any other at-grade green space?
Through Chair Chapman, there are other areas of green space in addition to the courtyard and the pocket green space areas to the rear of Building C. There's a ground level green space along what I call the buffer space of Building B with the existing residential. That would be at grade level landscape space. And then at the west side of Building B would also be landscape green space at the ground level.
Oh, just to act sort of right beside the surface level parking lot, you mean that?
Yes.
Okay. So what is contemplated for those green spaces, the amenity spaces? Is there going to be, I don't know, children play structure or just, is it going to be some landscaped areas without actually active uses? Do you know what you're doing there?
Through Chair Chapman, we do have a general idea of what we're doing. The active space will primarily be mixed with kind of the passive space in the courtyard second level amenity area. that's going to be the key focus for both the passive and active amenity space. The other spaces kind of that I mentioned just north of building C, west of building B, likely be more passive landscape.
Yeah.
Some ground level seating or bench or that type of area, but the
Okay.
focus will be in the courtyard area.
Okay. In the courtyard area, is that just for residents of the building A and the tower, or and building B, or is it also going to be accessed from members of the public that don't live there?
So through you, Councillor Chapman, I think at this point, we're not 100% sure. What we're sort of excited about with this development, and especially this like addition to the site as we've gone through the NIM in February, and what sort of resulted in this second floor or second level outdoor spaces, we see this site as there's a wide variety of housing types we've got. We were able to include 3 bedrooms, which we're pretty happy about. We've obviously heard about that a lot from the public as a need and a must in these developments going forward, and we've certainly listened and reacted to that. So we see, all sort of age groups living in this development, and or as an offering this development has, it can house all age groups. So we see that, call it raised landscape area, as something that must be designed for all ages as well. In terms of if the general public can come onto it, I think we're too early to know that definitively. Obviously, safety and everything else needs to go into those decisions, but we certainly want to animate that space that, at least at a minimum, the residents of the 3 buildings can use that space and be, proud and happy to be there and it be functional for their daily needs.
Okay, thank you. I'll cue back in. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your questions. Councillor Johnston, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Chapman, and thank you so much for being here tonight. Actually, Councillor Marsh asked some of my questions. My questions were going to be about the outdoor amenities and that as well. The renderings look beautiful, but as Councillor Marsh had stated, it looks quite full right now. So I also wanted to know about areas for a playground. And also areas for benches. Is there areas for people with dogs? A lot of people many people have dogs now, and a place for them to go and take their dogs as well.
So through you, Councillor Chapman, we're at the still sort of the early days, although we're deep into this project now. I think what's a unique opportunity about this development is we've got that raised outdoor space between building A and B. We also have the top of the podium of building A, which runs basically across the front of the site. So I think, what we've seen with Garment Street condos in Charlie West is, there are a lot of a younger generation, or old generation as a whole, that have a lot of animals. I think COVID is even more seen that change and become a reality. So we hear our public and we hear our customers loud and clear. We have to have all those things integrated in the site. So is it on the top of the second floor amenity, or is it on the top of the podium? I don't know yet, but they'll definitely be, all those items will be included into the design because, like I said, that's what our customers want at the end of the day, and that's what we have to provide to them.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions and your responses. Councillor Marsh, go ahead again.
Okay. So can you tell me about the design of the pocket park? How big is a pocket park here?
That's a good question. Do we have an actual area? What we're trying to do is break up the mass along Ottawa Street. This is on the one hand a large podium that runs a fairly a long frontage of a property. This is a uniquely shaped property when you see in sort of the site plan view.
Yeah.
But to accommodate that, we've sort of broken up the elevation of the podium. And I'd like Dave's comment. I think he said dynamic. I think the building is really dynamic. It seems to change from sort of every viewpoint you have. Dave's scrambling to find the square footage of those pocket parks. I don't know.
I just wanted like a general sense from your renderings. It doesn't look very big. It also looks just like a larger entranceway, and it doesn't look like. I think that calling it a park is a stretch, and I'm trying to understand if you can help me understand. Like, convince me why it's not a stretch.
So I think pocket park, maybe pocket garden. I think what it does is it provides someone to come off of Ottawa Street, be able to sort of sit and sort of engage with what's going on in the community, but also not be right on the street. The reality is that, Ottawa is being redone right now. The street's getting, bigger to accommodate bike lanes and all these different modes of transportation. So how we sort of see it is, there's these 15 3-bedroom live work units where we're hopeful that, families will be able to move in there, potentially operate a business out of there. So there's going to be lots of animation as it goes along Ottawa Street, but these are little cutouts that you can go in, sit down and have a coffee or engage with someone that isn't right on Ottawa Street. So it's sort of a way to break up our site.
But then you're also having an entranceway, right, where bikes have to get in. So if you're sitting enjoying a coffee at a bench, the bike comes in, and then anyway, it just seems really small. And I think it's my other main concern about your pocket park, aside from the size and the fact that it's really just a large entranceway, from what I can tell, is that for crime prevention through environmental design concepts, we try to avoid areas where people can sort of be hidden from view. A pedestrian walking at night won't necessarily see in the shadows of that pocket park somebody hiding. I feel like that's a dangerous spot unless you're going to light it well. And I'm just wondering if you can address that concern.
Yeah, so it is a great question. If we could pull up that rendering that was done, the plan is now it's sort of an entrance into the podium of the building. It also allows for passage to within the site. It's all glazed right now, so it's really just an internal staircase that's glazed. But the benefit of that is it's going to be super bright. There's going to be no solid built form separating the inside of the building from the outside. So you've got a 5-story staircase that, in all likelihood, will be fairly animated with people coming and going. That is going to provide that sort of safety and brightness. We also will be working through, those subhead requirements at the site plan stage, and would obviously be heavily looking into ensuring that, this is a safe area. That's number one goal for all of our developments. But specifically that comment, we will be addressing and making sure that, that everyone's comfortable with what's going on.
Would you consider thinking about changing the footprint so that, let's say the building A, on my drawing, it says building A for all 3, but I'm looking at the 2 5-story pods. And I'm just wondering if they became, let's say, 6 stories each, but make them smaller so that you could actually have a little park. And just wondering, did that come up in your design discussions?
So I think, we don't have Matt Boland, our architect, here tonight, but I think we've spent a fair amount of time looking into how we are tweaking that portion or this portion of the site. But ultimately, the reality is we still are early in the design phase of this project. So those are type of comments that we'll obviously take back and look at, and then, hopefully be able to sort of really hammer out during the site plan phase and make sure everyone's comfortable with what's going on.
Okay, great. I mean, I'm happy with the FSR of 3. I think that's terrific. I think I like the tower. I just I'm concerned about landscape space, green space for members of the public, and just the general pedestrian access, walkability. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I don't see any more questions, but I have a couple. When you talk about building A, 26-story building, is that on top of a 5-story podium, or is the podium beside the tower?
That's total building height, including the podium.
Okay, it wasn't clear to me. In the report, it refers to adequate bike storage. I know it's a staff report, but what for you would be adequate bike storage?
So that's a great question. I think that's sort of what we're seeing in reality at Charlie West and the Garment Streets is it's changing every day. I think adequate bike storage is at least 1 bike space per unit, and potentially more than that. I think we also, do a good job of providing a range of different bike storage methods. Some of it might be sort of larger areas that are open that lots of people can park a bike. Others might be, within their own internal storage locker to the unit within the parking garage or something like that. So at the end of the day, I think as people are driving less and less dependent on vehicles, we need to react to that by providing more, bike parking as an example, because that's the future, and that's the solution to deal with some of the environmental challenges, et cetera, we have going on. So I think simply 1 per 1 at a minimum, and potentially more than
Okay, and that's a variety of both secure and not so secure. Like caged versus just,
Yeah, like I think Councillor Chapman, they'd be secure from the standpoint that everyone would be able to lock up a bike no matter what sort of form it comes in, but some of them might be also within a storage locker.
right. My other question has to do with the special provision to allow sales, rental services, storage, repair of motor vehicles. Have you considered a grocery store instead of sticking with the motor vehicle industry?
That's maybe a question that I'll from a standpoint of what we're looking to offer in the building. There isn't a lot of opportunity on this site for lots of grocery type store retail. You know, we're seeing on a site like this, it could be like, 30,000+ square feet of space needed to accommodate a grocery store. Well, in terms of the permitted uses, we're not necessarily looking at implementing one of those uses within the site, but I think it's just for a range of options.
Okay, my last question. So these are all rental units, right? Do you know the average rent for a 1-bedroom versus 3-bedroom unit? And will there be any affordable housing units in the build?
So this will be a mix of condos and apartments or rentals. We're in the early days of how that split will look, but I think what is unique about this site and sort of the range of the tower and the low rise out back is we can be a little more versatile with providing both apartments and condos. This will be a phased development just on the nature of how many buildings there are. So it allows us also to react to see where the need is more. So right now for the main tower, the 26-story building will be a condo. I can tell you that sort of definitively, but it does provide us some flexibility for the other two buildings.
But you're not talking any affordable units at this stage?
At this point, we're still, endeavoring on what we've done on previous projects, which is making a financial contribution to an affordable housing provider.
And has that amount been defined, or?
The amount will be the amount's approximately $350,000 that we'll be donating.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Davey, is it a question for staff or a question for?
Actually, I would like to float it to the delegation first before.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, just following up from Councillor Marsh's question, and I'll defer to her because it's her ward. But with respect to the, I guess I'll preface it by saying I like the idea of going maybe a little bit higher on the 4- and 5-story if it increases the park space. So you said that you were open to that, and I'm going to be asking staff afterwards just to confirm. Like, just if we approve this, I'm not sure that you would be allowed to be open to that, but I just wanted to confirm that's something that you'd be happy to explore in the future if we left that freedom there.
Yeah, like I think, at the end of the day, we obviously pride ourselves on working with city staff. We love doing work in the city of Kitchener and we'll plan on continuing to for a long time. So yeah, we're happy to explore anything that seems reasonable. If we can do it and it makes sense, we would certainly be willing to accommodate that. And I think, sorry, Councillor Davey, but I think it also, when we were talking about connections from neighboring sites onto the site earlier, we'll work with staff in the neighborhood to determine what makes the most sense. And, if the majority of people are happy, then we're happy and we'll implement it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I don't see any other questions for you. So thank you very much for coming in and telling us about the proposal.
Thank you very
much. Are
much.
there any questions for staff? Councillor Davies, your hand still up from, okay, go ahead.
I lowered it and raised it, yeah. Yeah, sorry, so just following up from Councillor Marsh's question, if I could. Sorry, I'm looking at on the document that I have from staff. I'm not sure if it's a typo or if it's old, but there's a picture of the revised development concept plan. And essentially, what's different from the graph is it says one of the buildings is 4 stories, but I'm showing the 2 adjacent to the 26 are 5 and the larger building in behind is 6. So which of those is the 4 stories? The large building in behind, or is it one of the 2 that are adjacent, Mr. Dumart?
To the chair, the 4-story is actually building C, which is at the rear of the property closest towards Onward Avenue. So originally it was proposed at 6 stories and that was dropped to 4 stories to provide a better transition to the adjacent low-rise residential homes.
Okay, and so that's the one, looks like it has what I'm looking at has the largest base footprint. Is that right?
It would be the northwest portion of the site.
Okay. And was that drop more design based, or was there residents that were concerned about that?
Through the chair, that was in direct response to public comments of concerns with a 6-story building adjacent to low-rise residential homes.
Okay, I'll leave it to Councillor Marsh if he wants to change anything, but the last question would be, if we approve this, the question asks the delegation, if we approve this as written, would they have the flexibility without going back to council to revise that back up to 6 stories, for example, and then shrink the size of any of the other buildings to accommodate more green space?
Through the chair, the 4-story building is regulated by building setbacks. So if the building height of the 4-story were to increase, it would have to be significantly set back from the low-rise residential homes. However, if there were to increase park space, I believe that they would be able to increase the podium height rather than increasing the low-rise residential building, the 4-story building adjacent to the low-rise res homes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Councillor Marsh, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Mr. Dumart, so are you saying that in answer to Councillor Davies' question, that approval of this this recommendation does not actually keep us tied to the number of stories along Ottawa Street?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay.
Staff is not recommending a height restriction.
Okay. And another question, just if you can tell me about your thoughts on the pocket park concept. Do you it's just basically an entranceway to the stairs, and there's a bench there, but it also could be, are you not concerned about crime prevention through environmental design concerns, like so that it would be basically a place that could be like a little hiding spot, couldn't it?
Through the chair, through the site plan process, staff can request a SEPTA report that would identify any SEPTA issues, and they could be rectified through the site plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And with regard to the pedestrian access for people living, for example, on Onward, wanting to access the plaza, do you see an opportunity there for us to allow for pedestrian access?
Through the chair, parks staff and planning staff continue to look into the feasibility of that pedestrian connection. A previous council approved the sale of Crescent Ave, and that transaction remains open. So in the event that transaction closed, there would no longer be a connection opportunity to Crescent Ave.
Isn't there a sunset clause in that if the sale hasn't closed in many years, then when would it become something that is no longer that is void rather than valid? Looks like Mr. Dumart doesn't want to take that one. Maybe, oh, here we go.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Marsh. That's a question maybe we would have to defer to legal staff, and it's something that we are continuing to review. So we don't want to give a definitive answer on that. There are ongoing negotiations, but we have assured the residents that we're going to continue to look into that possibility. We understand the desire to have the pedestrian connection.
Okay, and while I have you, Mr. Stevenson, my other follow-up question is with regard to some comments that we've heard from residents about neighborhood shopping center. Since we're taking the zoning away for that, and that is clearly needed for a grocery store to be somewhere in the general vicinity, what plans are there for allowing that to happen nearby?
So Mr. Dumart may want to supplement my answer, but we know that this development application is a partial piece of the neighborhood mixed-use center that is existing now, and one that has been traditionally used for automotive sales. And we see this as an opportunity, due to the depth and the proximity to Ottawa Street, as an excellent opportunity for home-based commercial businesses and work units along Ottawa Street. We do think there's a greater opportunity on the site that's currently developed for a plaza site to have a larger format commercial space. The configuration of that site, the depth of it functions much better for some of those large scale commercial operations. So it's something that through our neighborhood planning reviews, as well as if we do receive a future application on adjacent lands, we'll continue to work with owners to establish that.
So do we put a placeholder zone there, or like how can we make sure that future, in the future planning staff, future councils don't forget that we need, tell me more, like how can we assure this? Just like when we take away institutional land, we hesitate, right? Because we know that it's hard to convert back. What about for a commercial space?
Through you, Madam Chair, and to Councillor Marsh. So the current zoning permissions do account for commercial, and the draft zoning that's in the neighborhood planning reviews also is looking at commercial zoning COM5 for those lands as well. So in terms of the draft placeholder, we have identified that as part of the neighborhood planning reviews. That was part of the statutory meeting in 2019. It's something that we're going to continue forward with. And I know that Mr. Dumart has had dialogue with our policy staff, who is also leading that project work as well. There are strong policies in the official plan for food stores within neighborhoods, and we do see the adjacent site, which is about twice the size, as an appropriate location for that.
Okay, thanks very much. My time is definitely up.
Thank you for your questions. I just have a question about parkland in the area. So we have these pocket green spaces, but what parks are in the area?
Through the chair, it's been identified that this neighborhood specifically lacks park space. Informally, there's open space nearby at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. And in terms of actual park space in this neighborhood, there isn't any this time. So to alleviate pressures from the lack of park space, that is why staff has pushed for the enhanced amenity space on site to provide amenity space and open space for those residents.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schneider, you're next.
Thank you, Chair Chapman. I just wanted to make comment about the park space area. I grew up close to that area on Edmund Road, so there's some pretty significant park space, Shepherd School, Knollwood Park, including a picnic shelter there. That's about a 5-minute walk away. And it's also about a 5-minute walk down Ottawa Street to Nyberg Road, where there's an entrance to the Iron Horse Trail. So there are some really good amenities close to this. Just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thank you. And my question was around parks or utilization of the area where we're doing stormwater management with the creeks there. And I'm wondering if any staff is on the call who can talk about our plans around rehabilitation of the creeks and that are over there, and the possibility for green space and parkland around that.
Go ahead, Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that I can speak in general terms. I'm certainly not familiar with all of the ongoing infrastructure projects, but I think that the work that our SSU team has done has demonstrated that where there are existing channelized infrastructure, we are looking to add in green space. So I think that Filsinger Park is an example of what's possible where we do undertake those projects. So it's something that we'll continue to look at wherever we have those projects.
So there's not anything definitive on the books right now for over there?
I'm certainly not the one that can speak to any ongoing projects, but that's my general answer, that where we do it, I'm quite proud of the work that the team is able to deliver where we do have those opportunities.
Thank you.
Mr. Stevenson, while you're there, I just have one last question. Actually, this might be for Mr. Dumart, and that has to do with the sustainability features in the build. I may have overlooked it or missed it when I was reading the report, but are there attempts to introduce LEED certified or close to LEED certified components to the site?
To the chair. So LEED certification is a US based certification system. It's quite expensive to actually get a building certified. So rather than having buildings LEED certified, through a requirement for sustainability statements, we're pushing developers to build LEED inspired buildings. So including in the design of the building and at site plan process and at the building permit, we've encouraged them to include those LEED inspired design. So yeah, through the site plan process, they'll be required to provide an updated sustainability statement. And that statement would include some of the LEED inspired design features that they're including.
Okay, so nothing that you can disclose at this moment that you would really be pushing for?
To the chair. No, I cannot, not at this time.
Okay, good, thank you. So if there are no more questions, we need a mover. Councillor Snyder. And I don't see any more comments, or are there comments? Sorry, comments. Councillor Marsh.
It's a quiet planning committee night without any resident delegates. I'm a little bit surprised, but also I know that the level and intensity of engagement that we've seen from residents of this area and many of the established neighborhoods has been extensive, and a lot of times people write in their comments with a lot of thought and detail, and then get disappointed when their comments are not entirely addressed. And of course, we have a need for more housing. Of course, we need to have intensification in the major transit station area. And so we always have to balance the community priorities together with our local resident comments. So that makes sense to me, but I also think it's not appropriate to call a tiny, let's say a medium size or a large entranceway a park. It's not a park. Pocket park I've never heard that term before. It's a new one for me. Perhaps it's a more common term in other circles, but let's call an entranceway and a park a park. And so I'm interested to talk to the ZARE group, which I know are very interested to have additional dialogue with the city if there's an opportunity for us to find some common ground. I'm interested to engage in conversation between now and council so that we can hopefully come to some additional measures to address the comments that we have heard loud and clear from the residents that wrote in and that attended the neighborhood meeting. Yeah, I'm disappointed that we haven't found a good solution yet for the pedestrian access. And I'm disappointed that, again, that the green space at grade is not, we don't have that. I love the second floor amenity courtyard. That's gorgeous. It's going to be great for the residents of these buildings. And kudos to the team who designed this for finding a way to increase, have excellent number of bike parking, to decrease the surface parking. These are all good things, but let's find. I'm going to vote against it tonight because I want to see more. I want to see a few changes, ideally, if that's possible. But I am open to changing my vote when we come to ratify the decision at council. Thank you.
You're on mute, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I don't see any other comments. So, wow, this is a fast meeting. We're going to now vote on the proposal. So the motion reads that the official plan amendment application for 20 Ottawa requesting a land use designation change from neighborhood mixed use center with special policy area 3 to mixed use corridor to permit a mixed use development on the land specified and illustrated on Schedule A be adopted in the form shown in the official plan amendment attached to report DSD as Appendix A, and accordingly forwarded to the Region of Waterloo for approval, and that zoning bylaw amendment application for 20 Ottawa be approved in the form shown in the proposed bylaw and map number 1 attached to report DSD, etc. as Appendix A, and further that in accordance with the Planning Act, Section 45, 1.3 and 1.4, applications for minor variances shall be permitted for land subject to zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 21018 OCD. All of those in favor? And opposed? And that passes. So thank you very much. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Galloway-Sealock, and all those in favor?